It was a normal flight, indistinguishable from thousands of others that crisscrossed the sky every day. Inside, the cabin was a pocket of calm, the gentle hum of engines, the quiet murmur of passengers. For those on board, it was a routine journey. The plane had climbed steadily through the clouds, reaching its cruising altitude of over 33,000 feet. It was a metal tube suspended in the vastness, high above the earth. Outside the small oval windows, the sky was a deep, dark, clear expanse. Inside, the climate-controlled environment was a world away from the harsh, thin air just inches beyond the aluminum skin, a fragile barrier between safety and the void. Then, without warning, that fragile barrier failed. A routine journey was shattered in an instant. The ordinary became extraordinary in the most terrifying way imaginable. A sudden, deafening bang ripped through the cabin. It wasn't a pop, but a profound, explosive roar that seemed to come from the very structure of the aircraft. A sound so violent it felt like the world itself was tearing apart. 1 second the cabin was a pressurized, warm sanctuary. The next, explosive decompression. A hurricane of frigid -40-degree air tore through the plane, instantly filling the space with a thick, disorienting fog as loose items became projectiles. Passengers looked up in horror to see the impossible. The roof above several rows had simply vanished, peeled back like a tin can. In its place was the dark void of the upper atmosphere, a terrifying gaping wound in the side of the plane. People were jolted into pure shock. A young mother curled her body over her infant, a human shield against the chaos. A businessman's book fell from his hands, his mind blank with disbelief. The noise was a physical force, making it impossible to think. The howling roar of 500-mile-per-hour winds and the biting cold filled the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped, swinging wildly in the gale. Breathing became a conscious, desperate effort in the thin air. In the cockpit, the pilots were thrown against their harnesses as the aircraft shuddered violently. A cacophony of alarms screamed, red lights confirming their worst fears. Explosive, decompression. The cabin pressure gauge had plummeted to zero. In that maelstrom, there was no time for fear, only for training. Years of simulator drills took over. With practiced motions, they donned their oxygen masks, grabbed the controls, and began the fight to save their aircraft. The immediate danger was immense and multifaceted. Explosive decompression created a maelstrom of hazards. The most urgent threat was hypoxia, the lack of oxygen. At 10,000 meters, consciousness can fade in under a minute. The air was a physical force, turning loose items into projectiles. Metal shards and ripped panels added to the threat. Worse, the structural integrity of the aircraft was unknown. Following the rule, secure your own mask before helping others, they ensured they could breathe. Then they turned to the passengers with short, clear commands. Put on your masks, pull the strap, breathe normally. Where the roof was gone, systems were destroyed, so the crew improvised with portable oxygen. They fitted masks for the vulnerable, their calm cutting through panic. In the cockpit, the pilots were a model of disciplined action. Years of training had prepared them for this exact moment. Their response wasn't panic, but pure muscle memory. The captain took manual control, fighting violent aerodynamics. The aircraft shuddered as wind rushed through the fuselage, and he wrestled to keep the crippled plane stable. The first officer began the explosive decompression checklist, methodical and precise. After donning his oxygen mask, his fingers flew across the overhead panel, executing critical memory items. Mayday, 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 we have an explosive decompression. We are initiating an emergency descent. His voice was remarkably steady, a calm beacon in the chaos. He stated their position, their altitude, and their intention to descend rapidly. This clear communication was the lifeline to the ground. On the ground, controllers cleared airspace immediately. They diverted other aircraft, carving a protected corridor through the sky to give them a safe path down. The captain disengaged the autopilot, pushed the nose down, and pulled power to idle. The goal: reach about 3,000 meters as fast as possible. This was a race against time to get below 10,000 feet, where the air is breathable. Meanwhile, the cabin crew managed the human crisis with focused reassurance. One passenger later recalled a flight attendant's calm voice cutting through the saying her composure kept them from panicking. They ensured oxygen for the smallest passengers and secured the mother's masks. Moving swiftly through the aisle, they physically assisted those who were struggling. They secured the cabin and prepared everyone to brace for landing as the descent continued, their training overriding the natural instinct for fear. Back in the cockpit, alarms screamed, but the captain remained focused. He was flying a broken machine, with precision. In the face of abject terror, passengers responded with a mix of fear and fortitude. Clear instructions gave them something simple and achievable: put on the mask, pull the strap. Numb fingers struggled, but people helped each other. Quiet heroism unfolded across the cabin. Not everyone was calm, but many found strength in shared humanity. A simple hand to hold became a lifeline. Compliance and cooperation replaced panic. The crew had earned their trust. People braced, protected children, and focused on instruction. In the worst moments, a collection of strangers became a community with a common purpose. To understand the miracle of survival, we must understand why pressurization is essential. At cruising altitude, an airliner is a bubble of life flying through an environment as hostile as deep space. At 10,000 meters, outside pressure is less than 1/3 of sea level. The air is dangerously thin, and the temperature plummets to a frigid -50 degrees Celsius. Human lungs are built for dense air near the ground. They rely on high pressure to force oxygen molecules across the delicate membranes of the alveoli and into our bloodstream. The aircraft creates a safe environment by pumping compressed air into the cabin, maintaining an artificial altitude of around 8,000 feet. When cabin pressure drops below a set level, masks deploy automatically, a stark visual cue that the environment has become life-threatening. Pulling a mask ignites a chemical generator that provides a continuous flow of pure oxygen for about 12 to 15 minutes. That window of time is a critical lifeline. It exists so pilots can perform an emergency descent, racing the airplane down to a safe, breathable altitude below 10,000 feet. Every second spent high depletes oxygen and raises the risk of hypoxia. This is governed by the time of useful consciousness. At 30,000 feet, a person has less than a minute before they are unable to act. The rapid pressure change also causes severe ear and sinus pain, barotrauma. For those on board, it would have been a sudden, agonizing sensation. The extreme cold, now flooding the cabin, quickly numbs exposed skin and can lead to hypothermia, adding another layer of immediate danger. The descent and oxygen were about more than air. They were a coordinated race against time, escaping an environment incompatible with human life, 1 meter at a time. The descent was a masterclass in crisis management. The whole created bizarre forces, buffet and yaw. The captain flew by instruments, and by feel, thousands of feet per minute, terrifying and life-saving. The first officer managed communications and monitored systems. He watched for signs of further failure. Each call-out marked progress toward breathable air. On the ground, controllers opened an invisible corridor of safety. As the air thickened, the roar softened and the cold receded. The plane leveled off. People could finally breathe unaided. The captain's calm voice explained that the worst was over, and that landing was minutes away. On the ground, a massive response was underway. Fire and medical teams positioned for arrival. They prepared for everything from ear pain to severe shock and oxygen deprivation. The pilots configured for a delicate landing, slow and gentle. They still did not know the full extent of structural damage. The captain guided the jet to the welcoming runway lights. The cabin fell silent, only engines and a lingering whistle of wind. With a gentle thud, they were down, safe. A collective sigh and spontaneous applause filled the cabin. Fire crews secured the scene. Medics assessed and comforted everyone. The system had worked. Strangers had become survivors. In the days after, the focus shifted to investigation. Every fracture, every fastener, every tear path was documented. Teams began rebuilding the sequence of failure. First-hand accounts gave context to the data. The cockpit voice and flight data recorders were analyzed. The FDR showed how the airplane behaved and how the crew responded. The CVR captured every word and every warning. Together, they revealed an unbiased, minute-by-minute truth. Investigators scrutinized age, flight cycles, and inspections. Each takeoff and landing stresses the fuselage. Pressurize. Depressurize. They asked if this was a freak accident, or a systemic issue in design, maintenance, or inspection. The root cause was metal fatigue, microscopic cracks grown over thousands of cycles. The pressure difference made weakened metal fail catastrophically. Emergency airworthiness directives mandated rigorous checks. New techniques detected cracks that once hid in plain sight. Airlines repaired or retired at-risk aircraft, raising the safety bar. The crew's grace under pressure became a model for training. Emphasis grew on teamwork, communication, and decisive action. This flight became a textbook lesson in decompression response. In the end, safety is a system: machines, maintenance, regulations, and people. When one part failed, the others held strong. In crisis, Procedures, training, and our humanity bring us safely back to the ground.